and welcome to the Volunteer Firefighter Podcast. I have two fire friends with me. I have Ash.
Hello.
And I have Scott. Hey. Scott is back and delayed.
We're trying this mic thing
out. Scott is back from his vacation.
Yep.
Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks.
Back to the real human food.
Yeah, cruising is good. Yeah, actually, I was just going to mention that Ketchikan has a pretty sweet fire station. They have they have a shirt dispenser where you can buy fire shirts right out of there. It's like a
vending machine.
Like a vending machine. Yeah, I haven't seen that before.
No.
Yeah, I guess
you pick your print, don't you? Yeah,
there's two. There's a halibut one, which they were sold out of my size, but Rob also has that shirt, so I didn't want to be the same. And then there's a salmon one, which is the one I got. I'm not wearing it right now.
Nice.
Actually looking or not. I don't know if you're trying to see if I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah,
no. Yeah, it's cool. I've never seen that before, and I think it's a good idea because you just come by and put your money in and get your shirt.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Absolutely. Can you imagine? I think Scott, you mentioned they have one of our restaurants here. You could sell a whole pile of society shirts.
I think that'd be really cool. So, we have a restaurant in town called the Fire Hall Brewery. It's a
bistro.
A bistro, if you will.
Yeah.
And there's a brewery downstairs. If we had...
This used to be our old fire hall.
Yeah, and it's in the old fire station. So, I think that whole thing ties kind of together pretty nice. So, maybe in time we can jump on that. Cool.
I wanted to bring one thing up. I'm sitting at the chief's desk. And Todd said it last week. Over my shoulder, it's a picture of our chief. What was the story? His son got that made for him? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the kids commissioned somebody.
Yeah. So our chief does not normally wear a king's robe or whatever that is.
You're aware of.
Yeah, and there's also all sorts of stress balls. I didn't let me stress them out because there's 15 or 20 stress balls back there.
This place is pretty stressful.
There we go. Over to Todd.
Moving on. News. So actually, so we have the rock slide, big rock slide, Highway 97, in between Summerland and Peachland in our area. So that's the main route up our valley, and it's fucking up everything. Essentially, it's screwing up everything.
It's real bad.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a massive rock slide, and basically this highway goes along kind of this edge of this big rock bluff and this huge steep bank on the edge of the lake. And part of that slide when it occurred, huge section, I think they said 13,000 metric tons or something big amount, is just kind of hanging there. So a huge slab fractured, and there's 1 to 5 meter gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So they're obviously pretty afraid that the whole thing could come down. So, last time we were talking about mutual aid and deployments and helping out communities. That locks us right out of it for now. If we had to go north again, we have pretty long detours where we're tacking on a few hours of drive time. So definitely affects us. And then in my job, EHS, it really affects us. So we've got some alternate routes for non-patient transports. However, that's our main artery to our major trauma hospital, and also for cath lab procedures and stroke bypasses, things like that. Mm-hmm. So it definitely affects us. We do have some things in place, of course, to see if we can get fixed wing or helicopter, and working with highways and the EOC to maybe open up that little single lane just for emergency traffic if necessary. But of course, it's still hit and miss if it's safe enough or not. So it's one of the big things affecting our community.
Yeah, this definitely isn't unique in that this is I want to say every couple of years we have either a rock slide or a wildfire that closes that section of the road. So it's not a big thing that happens by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
So I'm almost wondering why they don't put a whole alternate part of the highway in that's bypassing that area. The amount of money they spend on that section of the road.
I think the local MLA keeps pushing for that, saying we need to have an alternate, not what they put in place right now. There's Forest Service roads that they're saying are an approved alternate road or route, and I mean one of them, we actually took one of them the other day. Our family has a cabin, like kind of right up from the rock slide, like miles up. But so the access point is beyond the rock slide, but there's a back way that you can basically go from Summerland all the way over to Princeton, the back way, and then up and around. And they've dubbed that an approved route. And the bottom side is really good. Like you can almost do highway speeds. It's really good. And then you have to go the up and over, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And there was people on like motorcycles, like street bike motorcycles, that were trying to pass through there. It was like little Honda Civics, and they have no business being there. There's like rocks on the road like this, and sure they're like passing a grader every once in a while, but there's no reason why cars should be going on that. It's just that should not be an approved route. I mean, better than some of the other options, but it's adding hours and hours to travel, and yeah, brutal.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things with that too. Like I mean, the dust it gets pretty atrocious sometimes.
Absolutely.
Your visibility is shit, and then because everybody wants to still travel and drive those routes, the increase for accidents and other issues and rescues now, and that puts us going up these rural roads.
Absolutely.
And the wildfire risk is so huge.
Yeah.
Like they've advertised, yes, it's a high risk route, et cetera, but people are stupid.
The moment that you say that this is an approved route,
no green light,
they're all going. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was thinking about as I was driving up there is like I travel, backcountry often, and so like this was like literally a highway to me. But I'm watching other people drive, and it's so sketchy, and trying to see, like, I come around a corner, and like it's dirt, right? So there's no road lines, and like we're way off to the right hand side, and here comes somebody pushing like way across the center line. I can't move over any further, and we're almost touching mirrors. So like they're driving so quick and like braking so late. I mean, this is an accident waiting to happen. And then how do you get resources way up there? So like there's zero cell phone service. They do have some of the like AIM roads, and they are up there patrolling, so they have radio comms. But I wonder, in like the EOCs and everything else that's been going on with that, like what are they talking about for road rescue? Because that's not an approved area for anybody. So is Summerland going to look after a portion of that? Is Peachland? Is anybody? Or is this just free for all? And if there's an accident up there, nobody's coming?
Yeah. I mean, I guess technically we're still under the state of emergency.
So HEP, even.
Province. So
yeah.
HEP would cover whoever gets tasked.
Absolutely.
But, as chiefs and administration, like people, these questions need to be asked and talked about, right?
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah.
And I think the last time this happened was another rock slide was right before winter.
Yeah.
Because I remember trying to drive over the same pass in the wintertime, and it was like, or the similar passes, basically the same area. So right now it's wildfire season, but within 2 months it's going to be winter season.
Yeah.
And if this is still ongoing, because you said it's going to be closed for a while.
It sounded like all reports through our EOC, it sounded like it's going to be a while.
Yeah. So, I feel it's going to be winter, and now you add the winter driving on a country road, dirt road, do all that. It's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that's affecting us again in this area. But so last podcast there, we got cut short from a fire call. We were talking about structure fire that you guys are on. So we'll just touch base with that again. Let that story kind of wrap up. So Ash, you want to take that?
Yeah, we'll basically wrap up last podcast, which was the structure fire that wasn't really much of a structure fire, which is lucky. And then we did have another one soon following. But sort of to pick up, or we'll recap, we get on scene. There's some pretty heavy smoke showing from the Charlie side of the structure. It's gated and fenced everywhere, so you can't get easy access to the back side of the house. I'm doing my quick perimeter as far as I can see. It's like really smoky outside. It was kind of like the height of the wildfire season here locally. Like right now, we're nice and back to blue sky, everything's clear. It was really smoky, and you could still there was a column of black coming off of the back. So I go up to the front, and you can see in the front window, there's a pretty big picture window next to the door, and it looked really hazy inside the house. And yet, but I couldn't really make much out because it was dark inside the house, like pretty hazy. And I can hear this dog losing its shit. It was like one or two, I couldn't quite tell. And again, I could see the homeowner's pickup truck was in the driveway. So I got the first crew to run around to the back with the hose line. So they had to get through a gate, get around to the backside, and then report what they saw there. The next due engine was going to be going through the front door. And as the next due engine was arriving, there's this dog is like losing its shit now at the door. Like it's like barking, scratching. I'm like, well, I don't have any tools. I literally just taught forcible entry, and like using your boot, it should never be an option. But in my mind at the moment, you start to risk versus reward or whatever, right? And if there's an occupant inside and this dog is now losing its mind, I want to put eyes in there, like too sweet. So I controlled the door handle, did the old donkey kick, and got the door open and just kind of crouched down and looked. One dog ran out right away, and the other one was still cowering in a corner. So as soon as the team got to me, I said, "Hey, there's a dog over there. Let's get that out of there immediately, and let's start an interior search." So Kevin and a partner went in and quickly checked every room in the house. Luckily, it was just the dog that was found. At that time, I'm getting answers back from the back. It was a fire that started outside on the deck. There was some debris that was there, and we weren't quite sure what started the debris on fire, but it started there, ran up the outside of the house, got up into the eaves, and was starting to go inside of the attic. So some quick water application, luckily from the neighbor, who was just happened to have a garden hose from his house, was hitting it from there. So it didn't actually spread inside of the eaves. And then we just did a quick knockdown and mop up, and then a thorough inspection. Inside and out, we sent a crew up into the attic to have a look there, and again, there was zero spread there. So,
Nice.
like really fast work. I think all of that happened within 4 or 5 minutes. Like it was like rapid succession. So it definitely worked out really well. If the neighbor wasn't home, that whole scenario would have been completely different. Yeah, we basically got a fan going. We got the vent going in the house. At that time, the homeowner came home in his girlfriend's vehicle with his girlfriend. So they were away. He actually saw us on his Ring camera, and he says, "I was trying to talk to you guys. Like holy crap, what is happening in my house?" Yeah, he says he recognized me in the Ring camera, and he's like, "I couldn't quite tell what you're doing," and then I could tell what you were doing. But he was super thankful. Both his dogs were good. His house could have went up in flames.
Yeah.
So he was really happy that he still had a house to come back to. So I think we were maybe on scene for 30 minutes. It was quick in and out. So that one was really good. And then we wrapped up the week with another structure fire.
So that seems to be the theme, but not structure fires with little Ring cameras, doorbell cameras. Eh?
Yeah.
From all the fire deployments.
That's right.
Like,
people are chatting to people. Scott was getting chatted to.
Tons of video footage been popping up all over.
Yeah.
That, so.
Yeah, which is pretty neat. We later on in the week we got toned out to a structure fire. Didn't really have an address. It was somebody could see it, and there was a couple of houses in this one section. So they just said like we can see heavy smoke. So I'm responding. I get close, and already I'm starting to think I know where this is. And I couldn't really tell like what the addresses are because again in this area the addresses are a little bit funny. So like my size up as I'm getting there, like this gentleman has a nickname, and I didn't want to blast that over the radio.
Yeah.
So,
but I did.
But you did.
Well,
and I kind of smirked.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I should have said it anyway.
No, and I was like, we don't normally say people's names, but it's the easiest way because there's no address. And,
absolutely.
We know that house. It's kind of a I guess, a problem house in the past. So the best, like, because I mean, there's certain things to it that we need to know. So that's I'm just like, as I'm getting closer, I'm like, is this so and so's house? And you're like, yes. I'm like, okay. So now right away we have a different plan. Well, not a different plan. We have a plan, but now we know how far away water is and all that sort of stuff. So I really had no bones about saying his name over the radio.
Yeah, no, for sure.
If it doesn't have an address.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to give something. So what I was doing, I got myself on scene. I got there was a couple people. I'm like, I gave the size up of what we had, so you guys knew like what the structure was, the state of the fire, and then there was 3 people that were running away from the structure. So I quickly wanted to go to them and see what, why were you so close to the structure? Is there anybody else there? So I got in touch with each of them individually, and they all gave me the same thing. No, there's nobody inside. No, there's nobody inside. I'm like, okay, perfect. And I'm about to reach back out and let these guys know, like, hey, it's, the first long driveway. And that's when Scott's like, is it this guy's house? I'm like, yeah, copy that. So, the engine rolled in, and the tactic on this one, because of A, where it was with limited water, B, it's a bit of a derelict house. It's a bit of a problem house.
The hazards in the house,
so many hazards, which actually dispatch came over and gave us like an RCMP update of potential hazards that could have come along with it. And we were getting some pretty decent ember transfer, and it's obviously forest fire season. So the initial call was, I just want to protect everything else around this. Let's not turn this into a larger event than it already is. The house, even though it wasn't fully involved when we first arrived on scene, there was no repair. There was no coming back from it. So, you have to do that triage, like what is important now, and stopping it from, and any further damage elsewhere. So the first truck was you guys, right?
Yeah, and the same thing on the truck. I said, because the way that approaches, you can see the fire as you're driving. You have to drive past the fire to get to the driveway to drive into the fire. So as we're approaching, I'm looking at it, and I'm basically doing a size up as I'm driving by. Like, well, and you had already said, like, kind of surround and around.
Yeah.
Concentrate on the exposure. So we had the discussion, concentrate exposures, make sure there's no grass fires, extension of the wildland, anything like that.
Yeah.
So then we arrived on scene, and again, limited water. And one of our tenders was actually out on deployment, which didn't really make much of a difference because we did hit the hydrant. Hydrant was a little farther away than the second engine realized, so they actually stretched their line, ran out of hose. I kind of jerry-rigged that into like just a portable hydrant. So we ran the hose from the hydrant. We thought it might assist us in the water supply, just having a little closer for the tender to fill up from. But the problem is with the friction loss and the hydrant pressure in that area, it actually didn't assist us at all. So we ended up kind of not using that kind of portable hydrant we built, and then just drew it directly from the hydrant.
Yeah, that was definitely on me. I requested the second engine to capture the hydrant, and like what I was after was for them to get it prepped for the water tender, because I knew we were going to be shuttling. So to start with, like, we weren't even worried about the house yet. So until we got that water tender on scene with a bladder dropped or 2, which is what we actually ended up doing, we were just going to be conserving the water that we had. So I figured, hey, let's get you guys, like, drop off a guy, get that hydrant tapped and ready to rock, and then come in here and we'll advance manpower. That's not as clear as I may have said it. So Rob was listening to what I was saying. I mean, there's no world where you'll be able to lay in from the hydrant to where we were. But hey, I mean, I said, let's capture that hydrant. So he went and laid into the hydrant. So, I mean, that's definitely on me. I mean, the only harm was we drained the hose bed. So it looked really, really good when you guys got back to the hall.
It actually worked out well because we were going to do that night anyways, because that was our practice night. And that night we were going to take apart the hose beds and kind of relay everything because, we've had a lot of fires lately in deployment and dirt, and so we just got to jump on it. So yeah, I took some guys back to the hall while the fire was kind of wrapping up, and we relayed the whole hose bed.
Yeah,
So,
it looked awesome.
And washed all the hose. And,
yeah, everything was great. So, I mean, outside of having to do that, which, like Scott said, we were going to do anyway, no real harm. So that was, in essence, about the excitement of the fire. Go ahead.
I was going to add one thing we've never really done before. We actually brought the bush truck in. Our little portable, our little side by side, because again, our other bush truck was out on deployment. Yeah,
correct.
We brought the side by side in, and it actually did tactical patrols of the neighborhood. Because of that ember transfer, and because of the wildfire danger, and where we're in an intermix area. We actually sent the little side by side ripping around the neighborhood, or probably about a good kilometer out.
Yeah,
just looking for any spot fires. Just because there was so much ember transfer when that fire was in the full rock phase, and I don't think we've ever turned our mind to that on just a single structure fire.
No,
usually, we turn our mind to that on a wildfire coming towards us, but never on like a single structure fire where it's going to go. So I think that was something that we should definitely think about in the future if there's ever a structure fire in the summer and it's in the middle of an intermix area. So
yeah, and I mean, coming off the back of the Twin Lakes fire, and that's what started a structure fire. Is what started that. Yeah. I mean, we were on scene and we were actually actioning the fire. Where way out there is no structure protection, so it was just a full rock structure fire, allowed to do whatever it was going to do. So, but still, like, having that in the back of our minds, it's great. We've got this piece of equipment that is super agile. It can rip around. Like I think they were maybe 10 minutes, and they did a patrol of up into the subdivision, all along the ridge. Like, they were everywhere that they needed to be. And they've got water suppression or fire suppression. So if they did see some spot fires kicking off, they were able to action it quickly, right?
Yeah, and it gives us too extra manpower resources if we needed it. Like quickly, they can come back and help us too, right?
Yeah.
So it gave them something to do rather than just park there. It wasn't busy work in any way. It was just doing that tactical patrol.
Yeah.
That is definitely something that I think a tactic we've adopted from doing all these deployments lately.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of adapting some tactics, because of the nature of the fire, and the fact that we didn't want to get close to it, because even at the very end there were some things, some safety concerns that were stopping us from approaching, even once we had 99% of it extinguished, rather than going up and being face first in some of the mop-up stage. We actually ran some sprinklers, basically just to squash any additional fire, keep everything protected. It worked out really well. There's like a basement and some concerns again that we didn't want to put any firefighters in danger. So a couple of wildland sprinklers. We just had a couple ground spikes and ran it right off the hydrant, because now that we're not laying into the driveway, it was actually, I think, 4 lengths?
It's about five or six, I think. So,
okay.
So about 600 feet. But
you got a bit of a draw on a creek bed.
Yeah, but it went to the bushes rather than around the driveway. If it went around the driveway, it would probably be about a 1,200 foot lay.
Yeah.
So 600 feet of forestry line, so inch and a half, which sounds like a lot, but by forestry standards, that's like a short lay.
A very small lay.
Yeah. And I just which we'll talk about probably with the what's that fire called in Pomelo Brook? What's the name of that fire? Park Rill. When we were on deployment, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit, we laid 200 or 300 lengths of hose to do a water system for sprinklering. So in the grand scheme of forestry, 5 or 6 lengths of hose is nothing.
Yeah.
So actually, that's another thing taken from the deployment. My concept of long hose lays has changed. 600 foot hose lay of forestry line is not very far. When it gets to 2.5 and inch and a half structure, that's a pretty good pull. But,
yeah. So that was about it for that structure fire again. A good structure fire is always good for morale. Getting the crew working, and like this thing was hot. It was, it was definitely rocking. Um, but there wasn't a lot of skill that was involved in this one. It was definitely, but it was a lot of watching your team's back.
Yard work, if you will.
Oh, so much yard work. Yeah. Oh man, funny story, true story. So I'm cruising TikTok, and one of the old ones comes up from way back in the day of Jason Patton,
Yeah.
and it's like his first video of like the shit firefighters say, and the first thing is like, what the hell was it? It's like, you either fight fire with a deuce and a half, or you go drive an ambulance. So like everything's 2.5 inch, and then smooth bore nothing. He's like dragging a fucking like ground monitor. It's crazy. But I had a nice chuckle. I'm like, oh man, we do a lot of transitional attack. We do a lot of exterior water application. And like I understand what he was saying, especially after speaking with him, like where he says, yeah, there's definitely a time and a place for everything. That was definitely more of a like satire and to make fun of things. But we do a lot of exterior work, and on this one, that's all. Like there was nothing else to be done. So as much as it was like quote fun, it was good to get the crew working. It's always good for morale. None of these fires were a lot of actual work, which is good. Like you don't want that.
Absolutely.
You do, but you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's our wildfire rating in an intermix area. Those are scary fires. They can take off pretty quick, and now you got resources spread everywhere. So
yeah.
Well, it was 33 degrees or something. So
yeah, it was definitely still very much like summertime. I'd say like for like us in command, that was a stressful onset to a fire. Like myself being there first as IC, and then once the first crew got to work, and the second crew lay in, Scott jumped on as safety officer right away and took on that role, which worked out really well. And I would say like our biggest concern was everything else.
Yeah.
Like the actual structure fire was, that was nothing, right? But everything else surrounding that is now a really big concern. So yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on. So we wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the deployments and whatnot. So next week we're going to try and bring on some guests, but we want to talk quickly about kind of what the deployment looked like for you guys, just with our close deployments, not necessarily the Lillooet one, the far one.
Yeah. And I think it's like the non-glamorous kind of work that people, because when we talk about deployment and we talk about all that stuff, where guys are thinking like the big show, which Todd, you also got to see some of that, which we'll talk about. But for a lot of times, if you're not there the opening night or even second night or second day, deployment is a lot of prep. You're prepping sprinklers. You're doing triaging. Sorry, you're doing triaging first, then you're prepping the sprinklers. You're helping with the sprinkler protection units. You're running routes for safety. You're doing a lot of patrols. You're doing a lot of PR work. So
there's a lot of people and homeowners still hanging around and asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. So that's kind of, it's, I think everyone has in their mind, like, well, it's like when they first start firefighting, they think it's going to be all like kicking indoors and rescuing babies and stuff, but it's rare when you actually have to kick in a door other than Ash kicking in a door.
Save some dogs.
Yeah, save some dogs.
Oh, man.
So why don't you guys talk about it? Why don't you talk about kind of what this local deployment looked like for you guys, and some of the kind of the general tasks that you guys did on this one?
So I think I'll talk about the Crater Creek fire, which is a Carmius one. So we got there, well, we initially got paged out because it was kind of sitting up in the mountain for well over almost a month. It sat really up in the mountain, and I think we mentioned last time it was the weather pattern changed that one week, and that's really when we had the massive fire in West Kelowna, and it kind of really got crazy. The shoe swap, all these places really kicked off. Well, that fire it came from high up in the Cascades, Cathedral Mountains, and then kind of pushed its way down into the town of Carmius. Didn't make it all the way, but on the night we got called out to assist, it was definitely coming down really fast. So initially we
do lots of embers.
yeah. So initially we actually did stand by at the hall for them while they were all out. Actually, there was a bunch of other units out there, but they didn't need us. They wanted us in reserve. So part of that's part of that deployment. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun work, but we try to figure out where their radios were, because they're not a mutual aid department. They're like a loose mutual aid department. They're like second line of mutual aid department. So we don't have their radios, comms on our channels or anything like that. So trying to find radios that they had. Most of their radios were actually out on the line. Talking to their chief, trying to figure out how, like, if a call comes in, how is he gonna let us know? So he actually came up with this system where he'd either phone me or he'd call on the OFC channel, which is another channel that we use, so that way we could hear it, and then he would send us to where we need to go. So us and another unit from another town hall. So there's a tender engine stationed at their hall for that opening night. Then we kind of got sent home as the fire kind of settled a little bit and kind of came down really deep and then kind of sat low in the basin. Then the next day we got our drawdown, which means that forestry now wants us to head out there and help them. So we were actually going to be drawn down the next morning. So the next morning is actually when we got on scene. Got on scene. Started off a little hectic. There were some fires really low in the valley. We ended up doing a lot of patrol work, just making sure the fire wasn't jumping guards, just kind of patrolling the engine. And then they were really concerned about it jumping the river, because it was it's a pretty big river. But and this was before
this fire doesn't jump bodies of water.
Yeah, and this was before the fire jumped like a kilometer over the Okanagan Lake.
Yeah.
So even in my mind, I'm like, man, it's pretty long distance for it to jump. But knowing what it can do, like obviously I know it can jump that far. So we actually got tasked with going to one of the two of the different trailer parks, and by trailer park I don't mean like they're like mobile homes. They're like retirees. The one was super fancy. Like
it was really nice in there.
Yeah, it had like a indoor swimming pool. It's like it was actually more of a resort than anything.
Retirement resort.
Retirement resort. So our job was to kind of just patrol around there, check their water supplies, because it's, again, this is not in town. This is away. So both communities that we checked, because it was the two biggest areas that we had to look after for these kind of two retirement communities, both had their own standpipes. They had their own fire protection little committees, and each one had kind of a unique way to do it. And it was interesting, so we pull up, and they hadn't been evacuated yet. They were on alert only. So, of course, as soon as the fire truck pulls up and there's a big, massive fire burning, everybody starts coming out. We have to leave. What are you guys doing here? So we kind of took it. That was our job, was to kind of calm everybody down, explain what we were there for, ran their water systems, talk to the guys that came out to, because they want to come out and explain everything about their water supply, which is great. They showed us where their hoses were, because they don't necessarily know that we're probably not going to use their hoses unless it's a last resort. We're going to use our own stuff, but what we do need is water. So we ran their hydrants. Both of them had just done drills the day before, because they obviously they saw the fire coming. So both resorts actually ran their water systems the day before, made sure their pumps were working. They actually one of the communities actually labeled all their portable pumps with any little issues. So one said sticky choke, one said hard to pull, it's hard to start. It was actually pretty good, the information they put on their pumps, so we would know. Again, probably wouldn't use their actual pumps, but it was good to have them there if one of ours didn't work or something. Because in the pinch, we're going to use whatever resources we have, right? Mm-hmm. So we kind of drove around the two neighborhoods while the rest of the apparatus. We were divided up into a couple different task force. So our task force was assigned to do these kind of patrols and checking for water, and we weren't even triaging houses yet. We were just seeing how the water supply would work and talking to the people. I brought up the Kestrel. to show them, the weather, how the Kestrel works. So Kestrel is a weather meter. So we were discussing fire weather and, crossover. If it hits 30 and then below 30 on their relative humidity scale, then we're in crossover. And just trying to explain that to them because, they see fire differently than we do. Like they just see the flames. So they see these trees candling off in the distance. But we're watching what the smoke is doing more. Like, yeah, a tree's going to candle. Any tree will candle. Yeah. But we were watching the smoke, and the smoke layer was just kind of sitting there and hovering. So we're like, okay, weather's not super active, fire's not super active right now, just kind of sitting there. A tree candling every 5 to 10 minutes is not really a big concern for us because it's going to happen. Yeah. It was actually, as one of our guys said, it was almost a perfectly burning fire because it was kind of burning undergrowth. Once in a while, the tree would candle. At this point, earlier it wasn't. Earlier it was definitely like rank 4 or 5 coming down the mountain. By this point, it was probably about a 3, hitting 4 every once in a while. Slowly kind of making its way down the mountain, doing what fire should do, kind of wiping out that undergrowth,
that fuel.
Yeah, that fuel. Right. So it was actually almost a perfect fire by that point. So we were just there kind of as that second line of defense. First line being the sprinklers, protection, and all that kind of stuff, and the forestry guys doing their backburns. So that was really our job for almost 4 or 5 days, just kind of keeping everybody calm, doing a lot of patrolling, triple checking water supplies and all that kind of stuff. If it did turn on us, and obviously what happened in West Kelowna, that did happen. It turned on them, jumped the lake, and became really bad on the other side. Mm-hmm. So that could have easily happened to us because we were in this weird valley, winds, directions going every which way all the time.
And like even though you're not really triaging, which I'm sure you're going to talk about with the Park Wildfire, what you guys did, but part of that kind of tactical controls and this patrolling, you're kind of already triaging because you're identifying risks, not necessarily flagging and triaging yet, but you're identifying risks, your evacuation routes, what routes work, what's potentially defendable or not defendable if something comes that way. So you're already building that plan, right?
That's right.
And then that works good. You pass that off to a task force leader and go from there.
Yeah, we even made some notes because while we're doing the kind of walk arounds, we found a swimming pool, and then we actually found one guy came out. He goes, "Oh, do we have to leave?" I said, "Well, not yet, but be ready," and et cetera, et cetera.
I think, Scott, you were just wrapping up talking about running the Kestrel, talking to homeowners in that park.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that was like kind of the big takeaway from that kind of deployment. We, a couple of guys in the truck wanted the big action, the big fires. There was fires going on everywhere else, and we were kind of getting not the short end of the stick, just a different job, right? So the job is a job, and our job for that deployment was to act as PR and do those kind of triaging, like Todd said. It wasn't full triage, but it was looking at different places. Oh, I know what I was going to say. One of the homeowners came out and he was asking if they had to evacuate right away. I said no. And he said, okay, good, because my brother just had hip surgery. And if we have to evacuate, I'm going to need help. He said he couldn't get him out on his own. I said, okay. So we made a note of that in our notebook. And when the order did come, actually, I don't know how he got him out, but when we went back to the house to help, they had left. So maybe they saw the kind of the writing on the wall, and they just left on their own and got some help without us. But we did go back, and it was definitely a note that I made in my notebook. I noted the address. They were going to need help to evacuate it in the event of an order. So those little things.
Super good information because that that adds a lot to the issue that could arise during that moment, right? Like, I mean, when those orders are placed, it's generally, hope is the right term, but I guess everybody's hoping that when we give those orders out, we want everybody to be able to evacuate on their own and have their own plan. Because their own, like they always say, like during your 72-hour evacuation plan or safety plan, whatever you want to call it, the best person to make that plan is you for your household. So if somebody's bedridden, that needs to be relayed off to the EOC or to EHS through 911 and get that basically going. And once it's an order, it's hard because ambulance don't go into the order zone.
Right.
So that complicates things. There is situations where we can go, but under strict rules.
And that kind of was kind of the theme every morning when we have our safety briefing. We'd always talk about, who has the highest level of medical training, who has medical gear on their trucks. I mean, most of us, we have some level of medical gear, but then they would, usually task one of our apparatus as a medical unit in the event something happened while we were in the area of the order or the active fire zone. We would often discuss like, now we load them up we'd load them up somehow in the apparatus and bomb out to where the ambulance would be staged. So that was kind of our discussion most mornings. And I think Ash even said, that happened in your guys' scenario you did, right? You did the scenario where the firefighter was down. The scenario that we did at the beginning of the year with the other agencies. One of the scenarios was a firefighter was injured, and we kind of modified the bush truck to remove them.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely isn't ideal for patient transport, but it is what it is. Yeah. So you just make it work, right? We had, we put the stretcher, the clam across the back seat of our bush truck, and we had, I think it was Kevin sitting backwards, basically sat on the center console and worked on the patient, if you will, from where it happened all the way back to the safe zone, where BCHS would have met us. So, and we actually in our truck got tasked on that Park Wildfire as the medical response team while we were up there, because we actually use that truck as our FR truck when it's home, and we didn't have anybody up there as of yet. So, and we actually got a couple of medical calls while we were there. Mm-hmm. Not to jump ahead there, but yeah, it was that is something that needs to happen every operational period to make sure that you have a medical team. It's going to be for yourself, for firefighters, but also the reality is even during orders, there's people that stay. So if something happens, I mean, you're still going to give care to the people that are staying. Just because they stayed when there's an order, you don't just, okay, I can't see you. So yeah, no, let's go and give care to these people. So yeah.
And that's super important with those morning safety briefings about that, having those discussions and planning that, because part of that discussion may be okay, depending geographically where that is it safer to just load them in a truck and deal with it, take them to an ambulance staging area, or can we get an ambulance in there with a crew if it's not an active fire zone, or are we calling for a chopper and guiding a chopper into our location and put them on the chopper?
Yeah,
so that's the one nice thing with these forestry calls is that usually there's choppers flying, right?
Sure.
But like we talked about last week, smoke wind conditions, sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess we could jump ahead now to the other fire, because that pretty much took care of the Greater Creek fire. Just a lot of patrolling, a lot of triaging and light triaging and PR.
Yeah. So when we talk about the Park Wildfire, we kind of talked about how it kicked off. It started with a structure fire in Twin Lakes region that quickly spread.
And I don't think we have to get too in depth, because we're going to have hopefully the people and people that were on it next week.
Some insight there.
Or maybe talk about
just a couple of the things that we did there. So we were up there, I'd say kind of for the second operational period. So it had already kicked off. They made it through. No, it was the first. It was still the first operational period. They made it through the morning. So the structure fire happened pretty early morning, about 6 a.m. And spread to the wildland quickly. So it was already spreading heavily by the time that we got dispatched, which was kind of mid-afternoon. So day one, we go and respond to their hall to get tasked, and it was ran very well. I definitely have to give them credit for such a, as we all know, the first operational period before forestries, even involved, and you're just running it as a mutual aid department, basically. And what that looks like, there's so many people coming and going, and to get teams set up, to get comms set up, and get everything happening. I really have to give Willowbrook Fire credit. They handled it very, very professionally. I reached out to their deputy chief the other day, and said like hats off, you guys did really, really well. We got on scene and we were put into task force right away. It was we sent our bush truck up, and we sent up a water tender. So those were the apparatus that we initially sent. And day one, we were basically on tactical patrol and triage. We weren't doing anything more than just doing a quick site check of each property, seeing what the threat level was there, and kind of getting ourselves familiar with the area. It had already, for the most part, burned itself away from like the main, the main structures that were close by from like the original ignition point. But there was always threat of it coming back. So day one was a lot of triage. We would go do a quick triage, and then got moved into doing some like actual like true fire smarting for the second half of the day. So they had this one spot, Yellow Brick Road. They got us to go in there, and there's like 8 properties on there, and the second half of the day was all fire smart. So there was not a lot of sprinkler systems set up yet. They had just got an SPU dropped, but at that point we were just doing like tactical triage and then fire smart. Most of the homeowners had left. There was still 2 that were still on scene, and they were very helpful. You can run into some of the homeowners that don't want to leave and don't really want you there. These guys were the opposite of that. Very, very, very welcoming. Kind of gave us a brief of everything that was going on with their property, and they were very knowledgeable about their neighbors. And the way that the fire was coming, there was basically, I mean, it's tough to say this over a camera, but it basically ran up a ridge on one side. It was running to the south, and then there was a bit of a valley that dumped straight down towards Yellow Brick Road. And that's where all of these structures were. So it was, with the proper wind, it was going to be coming straight down the chute. So that was their like first major, I think, point of concern. Mm-hmm. Which then that shifted as the fire progressed. But making sure everybody was out, giving the last remaining people like a real, like, hey, like, we want you out of here because this is getting close. And the one gentleman, he obliged right away. The other people were one of the Scots. So he was not about to leave because he generally comes and fights fire with us every summer. He is a private firefighter. But we have ran into him every season. And he does awesome work.
Not this Scott.
No, not or one of our other Scots. There's a crew of 2 Scots that have a couple of Dodge pickup trucks and some water on the back, and like as freelance as it gets, but very, 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 very respectful. They don't get in our way. They're not asinine by any means. So,
yeah, you know what? I'm going to shift for a second from what we're talking about. Because I was thinking about something while I was away. And up in the Shuswap, there was a big issue with people that wanted to go back to their homes and fight the fire. And the police actually had to get involved, put up roadblocks, do a bunch of basically stopping people from going back to their homes. Really enforcing that order. And then at one point, forestry, from what I understand, because this was on the news, and sometimes the news is hit and miss. Forestry said if they had their not 1001, their S100.
They kept saying the S100.
If they had their S100, which is kind of an older wildland firefighting thing. It's not what we have. We have something slightly different. excuse me, they can go back in and they can fight the fire. And that got me thinking that it's kind of an odd thing. I don't know if that was actually true. That's what one of the guys in the blockade said. It's one of the guys in the blockade said to the people to kind of calm them down, and he was kind of an unofficial guy. If that was true, that was definitely.
I think it was very unofficial.
Yeah, he's like swearing away. It's funny. So I don't know if that actually was the case that forestry was going to allow them back in. If they had this course, now the course would be obviously. I don't know how they're going to suddenly take this course. But it actually got me to think while I was on the cruise about, is there a way to make that work? Because obviously we, like you just mentioned, we have the Scots, the local Scots, and the first night we met them was 2020 when the Ankeny fire.
Yeah.
We ran into these guys, and
what does it say there? When is here? 2021.
2021. No, yeah, it's right there.
Look at my chest.
And they, they were on scene, and we were like, and because we were on reserve land, rules are a little bit different. So the native chief allowed them on the reserve land to do the thing. So really, there was no enforcement capabilities from the police, and they were working with us, and they took direction really well.
Yes.
We actually showed them how to do a bump and run, if I remember correctly. We showed them how to load their forestry hose into a bump and run style, because they were willing to learn and they were willing to understand. And it got me thinking about, like, if forestry thought ahead in the future, would something like teaching like these remote places, having a group of instructors go around and teach these people, maybe not S100, maybe not the thing we learned, the wildland structured firefighting course that we learned, but maybe something a little bit more modified. Teach them basics, and then when these events happen, you like kind of send 2 or 3 structural protection firefighters out there, almost as again, it's almost like a special forces thing, like where they go out and they teach the indigenous population, like indigenous meaning like the people, the local people, how to fight wars and how to like defend themselves. Same idea would be like you send these, these 3 to 4 firefighters out in this little kind of a group, and they kind of muster these people together and they lead them, and they get them to, in a way where they're safe. They're still defending their homes. They're only defending their homes, or they're not hopefully getting anyone's way, and maybe working with people more than just like, no, you're not going in. Because I think when you tell people no, you're not doing this, that's obviously they're going to find a way to get in there, and then they're going to need rescuing probably, or hopefully they get lucky and they something they defend their homes, but it kind of gets rid of that animosity. I don't know. Yeah. I was thinking about that, and would there be a way that they could do that safely, where they could teach them at least methods of knowing when it's too far gone, knowing what your pumping capacity is, actually understanding what you should be fighting, not because one thing we did notice in the Ankeny fire, we did have another kind of a rogue element up in the mountains doing their own thing, and we were watching them, and they were they'd run out into the middle of the forest and try to put out spot fires, whereas that's like super old tactics that no one does anymore, that where we let it come to us now. Save our water, let it burn, burn to the guard, make it
cool away safely.
Yeah, take that time to build a guard, let the guard, let the back burn work, that sort of stuff. I don't know. I don't know if that would work, but maybe if that's going to be, because it's obviously not going to go away. These interface fires are going to, or intermix fires and interface fires are going to keep happening.
Yeah, I think that's I was thinking the exact same thing. So this unofficial spokesperson of We the People up there, he's actually a bit of a TV personality. He has his own TV show.
Not where we were. Where this is up in the shoot club. Yeah.
So, I mean, people listen to him. He's been a local there for basically his entire life. People listen to him because he is a TV personality as well. And like when he's saying these things about, hey, like BC Wildfire, if we had our S100, they would allow us in. Like, and same as Scott was saying, like my brain starts thinking, I'm like how would that work? So you can't be on an active fire ground unless you have these credentials. So maybe like that's a workaround that they like now you have the credentials, so you can be there. Now you can't, like, how would you activate, or how would you work alongside these guys? So to shift back to where we were, they were enforcing the evac area that once you leave, you couldn't come back.
Yeah.
So because the Scots were up in their home area, they didn't have to leave. They were always inside. So his like actual house is right dead in the center of the town. So he was safe, but he's got like friends and family that were over where we were. So like he was over there looking after them. They've got animals that they were trying to get out of there. So he was kind of like being the guy that stayed on site and allowed everybody else to like get everything prepped and leave. And then he was going to stay. So I think in this case, he's like, yeah, as long as I can get water and I can stay here, I can still like do the best that I can do. But going back to the shoe swap, it was exactly the same tactics. Like you start to see these videos come out, and like they're talking about how they had crazy nights and they were out fighting fire all night. And these videos are of them way off in the black, trying to extinguish small spot fires, or like small areas that are like still on fire. I'm sure they also ran into like the fire front, which would have been crazy up there. But I think that's where if you can get some of that knowledge, like don't go out there. Like that's already burned. It's still going to be active for months to come. Like basically until snow falls, you're going to be seeing these little small areas. Like even where we were driving home today, and I'm looking up on the mountainside, and you can see like there's active fire still. Mm-hmm. Is it a threat? No. Could it be? Sure. But we're not going to be traipsing way out there to go try to put this out, because there's like many factors that can be very, very dangerous to us, right? So I think getting some education to these people is very, very good. Would be first and foremost, but then also like what are the liabilities, and like kind of how does that look, Scott?
Yeah, I think the education first, and then they need some like leadership. Maybe not like lead them, but kind of like guide them.
Like liaise.
Yeah, a liaison. Yeah. Again, that's what they kind of taking that model from the military. They just guide the indigenous population to where they think they should be. Then it's not going to be perfect. And then kind of again back to the Vankity fire. There was again, so we had the Scots doing their thing. We kind of guided them as best we could. We weren't officially guiding them, and then there was another set of individuals, and they had like front end loaders. And I remember hearing, because I flipped the channel over to the helicopter support, like basically the eye in the sky, and listening, I heard say if someone could organize these guys, we would have a really nice fire guard. But because no one could organize them, they were like, I was watching them, they were way off in the distance, kind of an open grassland, and they were taking buckets of dirt with their loader, and they're kind of driving towards the fire and hitting the brakes, and it's kind of hucking dirt at the fire with these massive buckets, right? Because no one's ever trained them on, hey, if we all work together, these 4 massive loaders could have dug a fire guard across this big open field, and it would have been over.
Yeah.
I mean, the fire wouldn't have been over, but that section of the fire would have been well controlled. But it was an inefficient way of doing it, and no one really took it on. Actually, I think Carl was still with us at the time, and Carl and I were trying to drive out there to go talk to them. But by the time it was we were trying to get out there, it was too late. They were already like doing their thing, and yeah.
This is a really interesting topic, because like you go back a number of years, and this always happens. Mm-hmm. Like I remember what fire was, but it was a good number of years ago. It was all over the media again. There was a whole pile of these ranchers and forestry workers, and like they lived in these communities. They're active forestry workers. They had all their certificates because they would get contracted out for certain fires. Mm-hmm. But now this fire was threatening their area. So they contacted forestry. Hey, we got a crew. We got to have equipment. This is what we're doing. Nope. Stand down. Don't do it. Yeah. And we're basically told, no, don't do anything. You guys need to leave. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, no, we're not. Yeah. We're going to stay here and defend. No, you have to leave. No, we're not using it. So now it seems the communication is getting better with forestry about this, because way back in 2003, that was one of the biggest things that came out of the big review after that massive fire in Kelowna, because they had all these contractors and people coming in from all over the place, but they didn't use any of the local knowledge, any of the local contractors for the local knowledge aspect of it. So now it seems like they're finally getting back into it. And I think, like you guys were saying, like, keep going forward, keep that momentum going, and find out a way to actually liaise and communicate with these guys. Say, hey, next fire season, if you guys have this is your liaison. If something comes up, this is how we need to attack this.
Yeah.
I think it'd be super beneficial because there's a ton of people out there that have these resources, have heavy equipment, and know what they're doing. And then there's the people that have some small resources, like just some tanks and pumps with a little bit of common knowledge. That can still be a great asset for small areas, as long as you have that liaison that's safe. Because we see Wildfire is very safety oriented, but again, with a little bit of communication and forethought, this could totally benefit.
Sure.
Yeah. But there is that risk of a total chaos.
Yes.
Yeah, if they had like a unit, because right now they have a 3-pack. Forestry has a 3-pack that goes around their initial attack, but they're really focused heavily on the forestry part. Like they're going to do backburn, they're going to do calling the bombers, they're doing that kind of thing, right? If they made it like a unit where it's like you have the guy that can do the backburn, so the forestry expert, and you have the structural protection expert, and then maybe one other person that kind of is like a leader, that'd be pretty unique. That they could just kind of get like kind of airdropped in these places where they know they're going to have these little pockets of almost like a resistance force. Like they have these like little crew of people that are willing to work, and as long as they've been trained beforehand. Because when you really think about, like, I don't want to throw shade on us or on any volunteer department, but when you really think about us, we are trained in firefighting, but we're trained in structure firefighting. We train 4 to 5 times a year on wildland firefighting. Lately, we've been training more because it's been a bigger thing. But really, a lot of these smaller departments, they're only training 1 or 2 times a year on these big wildland fires.
Yeah.
And then they're getting thrown in the mix because they're trained. So it's like,
are they really that much higher trained?
They have the Gucci gear, and some of them don't have Gucci gear, and they have the equipment, and some of the equipment is,
Very true.
So just because they have fire department behind their name, does that make them that much better than these other people that could just be trained in the same way, right? Especially like you said, Todd, they're a lot of them were foresters. Like we have one of our members. He's a logger.
Mm-hmm.
I defer to him on everything trees. When we're out in the wildland, I'm like, you tell me what needs to happen because you know about what's going on with trees. Like I know stuff about fires, and so does he, obviously. But when it comes to we hit the wildland and it starts getting in that kind of heavy tree area, he's telling me what's going on. Right?
Yeah. There you go. Scott will be the liaison for the new RRF, the Redneck Resistance Force.
I want a green beret. Red beret.
Redneck Reaction Force.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I get sucked into these Facebook groups, and I think I was saying something similar last week, but you're watching all these people. So there's like Fire Watch 2023, and there's 1,000 of these groups up and down the province, and they're like, yeah. So as soon as Avery, the guy, says, "Hey, do this and get your S100, and you can come back out," so now everybody's like, "Oh, like now I have to pay for this. Like, the government's going to make me pay for this," and I am slowly learning. I haven't posted on Facebook in probably two odd years, but I've typed many a post, and I'm like, nope, back away. But I had typed out, why don't you go join your local, volunteer or paid on call fire hall? And like some of these guys, and I've actually mentioned this to one in Scott's. I was like, just be open about it. Be like, hey, like I probably can't commit to everything, but like wildfire season, I'm all in. For like X amount of things, I'm all in. And with like in our local area in British Columbia, with the playbook, which is now the minimum standards, there's means where you can have these kind of people within your organization that don't need to be dialed up on all of the interior structure firefighting, but you can still have them on, and they can learn about pumps, they can learn about the safety side of it, they could be dialed on forestry, and you can really bolster. And like now you're not being asked to pay for it. You're going to get paid in a lot of places to take these courses, and you show up and you might get a couple of bucks to train. So everybody, I don't want to say wants to be a hero, like, but they get that like hero mindset of like, I'm here to step up now.
Yeah.
So like when the shit happens, now I'm ready to step up. Well, okay, great. Like, thank you so much for your service, if you will. But where are you the other 11 months out of the year? Like, great. Like, you have what it takes, like, clearly, because you're out there, you're stepping up. That's amazing. Why don't you do it for the rest of the year, even if it's in a like lesser, capacity than a full interior firefighter? There's still opportunity there.
Yeah. I think back in the day, really back in the day, the fire chief was able to just go into the local bar and recruit people to watch fight offering
or whatever. Yeah,
that was like literally you're allowed to. The fire chief back then was allowed to do that. Just he'd walk in and be like, "You 10 guys are now wildland firefighters."
Mm-hmm.
So, should we go back to that? No.
No.
But could we maybe meet them halfway? Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
We had multiple people that were ex-members contacting us right in the middle of all this. Hey, can I come back? It's like, well, you could have in May when we were training all this, but right now, no,
Mm-hmm.
you can't come back. But maybe in May, next May, you come back as an auxiliary, like you were saying, and we make some modifications. I mean, we don't have to make modifications because it is in the playbook. Yeah, because one thing you do need to go on deployment, which is, it's a little different because you're in town. It's not a wildland deployment. You need your exterior certs to be a wildland deployment, but to be in town under authority having jurisdiction, do you need to have exterior? Because there's options for auxiliaries to just drive truck, to just do traffic control, to just do wildland. Because that's one course. I mean, that course is 4 days long, 4 practice nights.
Yeah,
but that's not that big of a time commitment, really. But then what do we do? Then you have to find them gear, and I think some of these people, maybe the reason why they're living out in the woods, aren't the best at following command. So they're not really interested in joining an organized department. So again, that's back to the whole you gotta have to figure out how far you can push them. And I think that goes again back to that whole mindset of special forces thing where they're okay, we know we're not gonna get the these guys aren't gonna listen to everything we say, but hopefully we can guide them down the right path to be mostly safe and fight these fires.
I think we have seen some of that this year, right? With E246 said something. And even touching in 21 there. If somebody can get a hold of those guys, give them some short little commands and some information and organize them a bit, they will be used.
Sure.
And we're already seeing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, just to wrap up, kind of like what we did loosely. Again, we don't want to go too in depth up at the Park Row Fire. So day one for us was very, very much just prep work. Day two, we got broken into a team, and BC Forestry uses an app for a lot of their structure triage. It's super fast and easy. Day two, we actually got an SPS on site, so things started to become a bit more official. It was still fast and loose, and I'd say until day three, things really got organized. But by day two, things were rolling out a little more proper, I would say. Everything went really well day one. Again, hats off, but things were becoming a real deployment now, as the infrastructure was getting set up there, command posts were getting set up, added resources were coming in, and you're actually getting task force, and we had multiple TFLs on site, so things were working well there. So we started to get
those acronyms.
Right.
What's TFL?
Task force leader.
What's an SPS?
Structure protection specialist.
There
Yeah. Thank you. So we started to get these people coming in, and we were breaking ourselves into task force underneath a task force leader, and the task force leader responds to the SPS. So the chain of command was now set up properly, right? Where day one, they had the deputy chief was running ops from their fire station, and like it was like their span of control was dog shit, and I said that, and I'm like, but you handled it well, and like because resources kept coming in, and it was so dynamic. I think there was a lot of time of like busy work because there was so much happening. So they kind of got people to go do some things quickly, and that's actually how day two started. I think they got us to go and do some busy work because there was other people that had started earlier or were coming off at nights, and they were wrapping up their task. But yeah, basically day two was a whole bunch of triage, and then which turned into sprinkler protection. So working with a couple other local municipality departments in the task force, we went and deployed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 structures for the majority of the day, getting sprinklers and pumps set up, and then we wrapped up the day using the app, grabbing photos and getting the info set up and sent into Victoria, so anybody on the fire ground could have access to where these pumps were, where these sprinklers were, what all of these houses are going to be defendable. And again, it's funny. I think Scott, you and I both were doing the same thing. Like everything was defensible, and I mean there was one house that like you would flag as this is a no-go, but yet it's also very defensible. So it's a challenge. So in like for me, structured triage, I don't want to put a lot of resources here like sprinklers because it doesn't meet the mark. Well, I know what forestry is looking for, and it doesn't meet the mark. Like the guy will basically say was like a hoarder. There was shit everywhere. Would be near impossible other than throwing an entire sprinkler protection unit at this one this one property. However, when you start looking around at the fuel load that surrounds the property and the egress, I mean, there was a fire hydrant right outside of his house. Is this a defensible house? 100% it is. So triage wise, we flag that as a no. But is it defensible? 100%. So I struggled with that, and actually I found myself with our team. We were to wrap up the day. We were tasked to go out to kind of the end of like the protection area, the operation area. Sorry, and there was a group of houses down low, and then I knew of one up high, and then I learned of another one way out back, and it was going to be to input the information into the app. So my TFL got me to go up there. So we put eyes on the bottom structures, and then we're at what I thought was the last one, and it wasn't on, like there was no address down at the bottom. Everybody else had like awesome address markers, but there was a very well maintenance road that went to the left. And we're sitting there in the truck, and I say to the guys, I'm like, man, like my gut tells me there's another house back here. There's no markers, there's nothing, but this road is just too nice to be just an access road to kind of nowhere. So I'm like, what I don't want to do, and again, comms is terrible. So like they knew we were up there, but they didn't know how far back. So I don't want to go rogue and just start going way off in the bush, but also my gut's telling me there's something there. So like I came up with the plan. I'm like, all right, guys, we're gonna go no more than, I think I said like 4 or 5K down this entire road, which turned out to be like a kilometer maybe. And there was a house with multiple outbuildings, but also while I get out there, here's our SPS. So I get on scene, and I'm looking. So our structural protection specialist is out there with a couple crew that showed up with SPUs from like way away, like up in Mackenzie. So like they're a long ways away.
SPU is
sprinkler protection unit. So we park, we walk up to to see.
Sorry, is it sprinkler or structure protection unit?
Oh,
I think it's. We'll find it out. I think it's structure protection unit.
Right? Yeah, so yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Structure
Structure
protection.
Which is
Yeah,
which is it's a bunch of
sprinklers and pumps. Yeah.
I think it just sounds better when you say structure protection unit.
Yeah. Yeah, fact. So we walk up there and like, I don't want to be the one being like, what are you doing here? But like, we're tasked to do this. Well, there was a little bit of overlap from our TFL to the other one. And so ours didn't know that they were up here. We didn't know that they were up here. But so, we're all there chatting. She asked like, hey, like, what are you guys doing? I said, hey, this is what we were tasked to do. She's like, oh, have you done any of the bottom ones? I'm like, nope. I wanted to start as far away and then work our way back towards safety. She's like, yeah, great. But while we're standing there, and I don't know if she had seen any of our updates yet or whatever, but she kind of smiles and like looks around and says, hey, I just want to ask you guys, like, if we had rank 3 or 4 fire coming towards us here, knowing where we are, so you have what you have. So that wasn't very much. It was our bush truck, no water tender, and the protection unit crew with none of their gear yet. It's like, would you feel comfortable staying here with rank 3 or 4 coming towards you? And I'm like, with what we have right here? She's like, no. Now we'll say with your whole task force. I'm like, okay, so that changes everything. We kind of looked around, and I'm like, what does she want me to say? Does she like? I know forestry safety minded. I'm like, fuck it. I'm like, yep. She's like, I thought you would say that. Okay, good. This is where we see the fire coming. Like, this is going to be one of our like major points of concern. So knowing that we are working in a comfort level where you guys feel like you would be okay to be here, is good. So that's all she really wanted to know, which like I then relayed to her. Like every morning when I got new people on my crew, I would ask them what their level of comfort was. So when we were working the other side of the fire, like there was zero comms. Like you had to go, and Scott, I'll let you take that in a minute, but like there was zero comms. You had to drive way back or way up high and then hope somebody was on the other ridge so you could go like line of sight. So like we were out there kind of working alone, and check-ins were like not over radio. You would send the text and then go around this one area and hope the text would get out. And the one TFL Tony was like, hey, like you did really good. I got your text every time. Like, thank you so much. Like, you know, you guys being way over there and then knowing that I was getting these like really took us like a pretty big stress load off. Like, thank you. Great. But I would chat to them at the start of every shift and say like, because we're way over here on our own, like, are you guys like, what's going to be your trigger point that would get you guys worried? And we had a pretty green crew on a water tender with us, and then we had a crew on an engine that was like pretty switched on and like wanting to kind of get after it, right? So I just said like, hey, like we're gonna have our own trigger point here. You guys with the tender, like I didn't even want you up here when things start to get shady because you're not going to be mobile. Like they're an old water tender, manual trans. We're up on some pretty steep inclines. The engine that was there was a mini pumper, so it was a lot more agile compared to like a long city engine. And then us in a bush truck. So we were basically lookout. The engine was going tactical patrol, and I kept the water tender. Basically, they would do like for every one tactical patrol of the engine, the tender would do a loop like once every 3, just to kind of make sure that everything's good for them. They have the most water. If we had to action any fire, they could come and fill us up. But for the most part, once we were over on the other side of the fire, it was just patrol. We found the super nice lookout, which Scott ended up making everybody his best friends. So I'll let you take it from there. So that was basically our lives for the first 3 to 4 days.
So we'll talk about this quick and then wrap because just one thing, like Ash said, good conditions were really bad. And this year we had bought with our deployment money, we actually bought a Starlink. So an Elon Musk, plants on the ground, and it does its thing. We at the time we bought the one we had, the mobile one wasn't wasn't around yet, so we bought the RV version, which is a little more portable than the home base version. We hadn't actually used it yet on anything, but Ash did say, because Ash and I were transitioning, so I ended up taking over his role the next day, and he said, communications up here are terrible. Maybe we should crack the Starlink open. So, it's in a nice case. We have it already. It was actually meant more for camp. When we're on these remote camps, to kind of contact family members and tell everybody we're okay, and also, to allow other people in the camp to use, which later on in the season we actually did this year. The guys took it somewhere else on another deployment, and Grant had said that, we were like the big hit, because, I had 26 people out in the middle of nowhere able to email and, FaceTime and all that stuff, because, Starlink's quite an amazing internet system. So what we did, we found this high point. It's kind of, we were calling it the lookout. So we ended up, high pointed on this lookout, overlooking the whole fire. And I dropped a Starlink, and I talked to that. When we got in the morning, I talked to the IC, and I said, hey, we brought the Starlink with us. I'd like to make Ash kind of gave me the rundown of where the best spot would be. And I said, I'd like to drop basically a comms hub up on top of the mountain. He's like, what? So he's like, okay, sounds good. And a lot of the guys are like, what are you talking about? Like, they're just like, they couldn't really wrap their head around what we were going to do. Is some kind of weirdo, like, crazy special forces Navy SEAL thing. The little antenna thing, just like, that's its whole thing. And so, we drive up on our bush truck and take out the big case and lay it and put it on the ground. We actually found, we were out someone's property, and I realized they were on a solar array, so they wouldn't lose power, in theory. And nice lookout, really good point. It was actually like a nice temporary refuge area, like some area where we could actually kind of stay. It wouldn't necessarily be a safe zone, because there was some trees around it, but it was definitely an area where we could stay and be safe. So they had an extension cord laying there, plugged it in, Starlink starts up. So doing the checks and getting it all working. I FaceTime these idiots just to test the speed. So on top of this mountain, I'm FaceTiming, and we're like, wow, crystal clear. Flipped over to cellular calling by Wi-Fi. Called the base, the home base down below, where they had, like, they were having zero comms earlier, and had a conversation with him. He's like, that's crazy. It's like perfectly clear. I'm like, yeah. It gives you a 200-foot radius, basically. So, this comms have called up the other TFL, who's a little bit of a, I want to call him a Luddite. Someone who's almost but he definitely, like, wasn't quite sure what we were getting at. I'm like, yeah, come up here. I set up this satellite hub for you. He's like, what? So as he's driving up, I hear this again, back to the ring camera. I hear, hey, thanks for checking my house. I'm like, what? I'm looking around, and on this pole, you can see his little camera moving. I'm like, oh, hey. And he's like, hey, yeah, thanks. I said, hey, can we use your power? He's like, yeah, do whatever we need. So, yeah, the homeowner was watching us, and he said, yeah, just use the power. He had a little bit of internet. Obviously, we're trying to be self-sufficient, so we didn't want to tap into stuff. So, yeah, the task force leader comes up, and I hook him up on his phone, and he's just like, this is crazy. Because now, all of a sudden, we went from having no comms, having a dead zone, overlooking a perfect lookout of the fire, to having a crystal clear comm, where now forestry can come up. They could send their messages to their people. They could make phone calls. So we had this comm area set up now, and it was great. It was well received for that day. And then the next day we didn't need it anymore, because the fire had moved on. And then moving into the other fires, that we just packaged it up. Ash found because it does run on power. Ash found a pretty sweet little inverter that he's plugging into a cigarette lighter.
Yeah, it was really cool. So we had a look, and it doesn't take a lot of power. So we actually got a cigarette lighter inverter, and it worked for 2 weeks out on deployment. They needed it; it was ready to rock.
Kevin and I debate. He says it's not portable. I say it's portable, because anything that you can drive around, and within 5 minutes you have crystal clear communications, that's portable to me. From going from 0 to 100% communications within 5 minutes because you have to set it up, starts back up, finds the satellites, hooks you up to the internet, and you're good to go. And you can do cellular calling and all. You can basically FaceTime people back in Victoria if you had to, show them the actual what's going on the ground. To me, that's portable. In the future, there's an even more portable one that Starlink has created that actually sits on top of the truck and tracks the whole time. So that would be something we look at in the future because it sounds like this is definitely a hit. Something we're gonna keep bringing with us on deployments, and it does help in camp as well with people being able to watch Netflix. Sit in the tent at night. That's literally originally why we had it. We weren't even thinking necessarily. I was thinking we could use it on some communication, but I wasn't thinking that we would be actually needing it to make an area safe.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Well, we'll stop there. Yeah, we can go for quite a while now. And next week when we have our guests on, we can kind of dive into the nitty-gritty and find a cast of what was actually happening on that fire.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's jump into some shout-outs. What do we got? Modus. Ash.
Modus. I was actually watching our video, the Fire Life video. Here we are. X gloves. It came up on my feed today. I was like, oh shit, yeah, sweet. So their claim to fame is going to be the Snagger tool. But like Scott just showed there, they've got the X lineup. They got the X gloves there. I got Kai, one of our newest members. That's just kind of coming up through training. Got Kai on the old X pouch at a recent Auto X call that we had the other day. So that's kind of like Gen 1 of the X pouch. It's not out there yet, but it's about to be, and it is great. So we kind of dubbed it the tool belt of destiny.
Before we even go with that.
I thought they called it something else.
No, our instructors call it the tool belt of destiny.
I thought we...
No. One of our guys called the one we built originally the tool belt of disappointment. Because it kept falling out and stuff would fall out of it. So the one these guys, the chemist instructors showed us, the Auto X instructors, they had the tool belt of destiny, they called it, which was a carpenter's rig.
Yes.
It's deeper and it's a little big. And then when we built ours, we actually built it out of so I guess that was technically Gen 1.
Yes.
We built it out of a Modus pocket organizer. A little too short. We attached a little top heavy, so every time you put it on, it would kind of fall out and all this stuff would fall out of it. So it was definitely the tool belt of disappointment.
Yeah. But now the X pouch, way nicer. Has a waist belt, cobra buckle. Has room for your snagger, for your battery wrench, for your what do you got? What kind of weird motions are you doing over here?
Pry bars.
Yeah, pry bars, battery fuel. There's a lot of pouches there. It's also got the leg strap, so when you do kneel down, bend over, that coupled with the flap that goes over top of it keeps everything in place. Ty got to try it out. All we needed was the old battery wrench there, but it's awesome. They've got their other textiles like their bags here. Get myself out of the way. You can see that. They've got soft entry, force entry kit. Check them out on their website and their social medias. If you like what you see, which you should, use discount code DTFF5 for 5% off your order.
Excellent. Scott, stop the bleed.
Yeah, when you're bleeding, stop it. Moving on. No, if you're gonna wear a tourniquet, if you're gonna wear a tourniquet, iron tight. If you're gonna use a tourniquet, use a good one. If you're gonna use wound packing, you can basically use anything. Some people use the Curlex or the C-locks, but really anything to work, a sock, a dirty shirt. Or that's not everything. So rewinding for a second, the three methods of bleeding control are tourniquet, wound packing, where you use your clean sock and or some sort of bandage and direct pressure. So yeah, was an instructor in this, and it's now getting pulled. But anyways, if you want to become an instructor, stubbleblee.org.
Country Music West Coast Canada. They're out touring, doing their thing. They got some new music they just dropped. What was it? Some country in it. Some. Yeah.
Love.
Wow.
That's Jack Gillis song.
Yeah, just search them up. They got some really good music. Put on a hell of a
Everything you
lot.
love.
Your love. Hell of a group. Put on an amazing live show. Yeah. Check out anywhere that you stream and download music.
This is your dirty sock. There you go. Give me another one. Wolf Street Coffee. Scott, that's for you.
Wolf Street Coffee. Yeah, we've been living off a lot of coffee over the last several months. Yeah. Was it your department that dropped off like a $20,000 or something? Yeah. Yeah. So Wolf Street Coffee, they have the initial attack blend that we helped create. We helped meld the flavors together by tasting it and going, "This tastes pretty good." Yeah, we blended it. We didn't blend it. We just tasted it and thought it tasted pretty good. So. What is that? Yeah. So, Wolf Street Coffee. Check them out online. They will deliver locally in the Okanagan, and now they will also ship internationally. They'll ship around.
Yeah. All the limit to that, but anything over, they have a threshold. You buy so much product, they'll ship it for free.
And then the initial attack blend, $2 per pound, is donated to Honor House, which is in not in Vancouver, it's in New Westminster. And to hear more about that, one of our episodes, I don't know the number, quite a while ago. Last year we had Al from Honor House on talking about it. So if you want to know more about that, check it out.
Then of course you have us. So check us out on YouTube, on Facebook, TikTok, and also it's just DTF. And there you'll find a link for our shirts as well, our new shirts. That's DTFF store. So reach out to us and we will ship you a shirt.
Yep.
Okay. Any more?
No, thank you.
Scott.
Thanks, good night.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Always stay safe, stay DTFF. Good night.